Hey guys, this is Jill and Darren with Stoke Events Podcast.
And we're talking all things wedding and event planning. But you know we're not stopping there as we dive headfirst into topical issues related to life, relationships, and overall well-being.
Get ready to have some open and honest conversations as we enjoy this brief dream called life.
This is the Stoic Events Podcast.
Stoic Events Podcast.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us again and yet another episode.
Yes.
Going to jump right in it. Today we are talking about...
creating a bucket list as a couple.
That's right. And why it's so important.
Why is it so important?
Well, maybe we'll just start with the bucket list first, right?
Okay.
What would you say a bucket list is? Some people out here might already, I know what a bucket list is, but we're going to break it down. So, bucket list is...
Well, bucket list could be really anything that you want to put on there. Anything that you have goals of going to do, like going somewhere or learning something new.
Goals. Experiences, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Different experiences, yeah.
Or achievements, right? Those... Anything like that you guys want to collect. We're talking about a bucket list collective together as a couple, right? Mm-hmm. On this episode.
Well, it could be like individually, but like you're putting both of your bucket lists in the same list.
Yeah, we're going to talk just about like you guys collectively or together as a couple. And why it's so important. You know, maybe you're just married, maybe you've been married for a while, but like you guys got to have expectations, you got to have hopes and dreams, goals of what you guys want to accomplish together.
Yeah.
Together. So we're going to get into some of that. Why is it so important to have a bucket list with your life, Jill Jones?
Well, I think it's important to have a bucket list as a couple because I feel like it brings you together on a different level. You know, you kind of get to hear what your significant other's desires are. It might be some stuff comes up that you didn't know about, like we talked about this before we started shooting this podcast, and I didn't know that Darren wanted to go to a World Cup game. I think that's kind of cool.
Coming to America, I think next year. Is it next year? But either way, that's something I've always wanted to do, right? I want to go see a World Cup game. I think that'd be really fun to see an international game. So that's just something that kind of came out.
But see, if we didn't talk about it, I wouldn't have known that. Like, it's just little stuff. It's not like a big deal, but it's like, that's interesting. And not only does it provide some interest, but it's also like, so why? You know, it strikes up that conversation. Why do you want to go do that? Why is that on your bucket list? You know, what's it really mean to you? And I think that's important because it just opens up that line of communication as a couple, and it kind of shows you like different ideas of where your person is wanting to go or things your person's wanting to do. And I think that helps also with maybe when it comes time for like birthdays or anniversaries or Christmas, you know, gives you some ideas. Maybe if, say, your significant other said they wanted to learn Spanish, maybe you get them the program from Rosetta Stone or whatever other program, you know, just different, gives you different ideas. Like, I know she wants to learn Spanish, but maybe you wouldn't have known that if you didn't create a list.
Yeah, it's exciting because you're like, man, I didn't know that was in you, but you know what? That's kind of cool. Let's check that out.
I think a lot of times couples don't really sit down and talk about their goals, like bucket list type of goals. Yeah. I think when people think about sitting down and talking about goals, it's always a financial goal. It's always like, where do we want to be in 5 years? They're not talking about the experiential
the mundane stuff, yeah.
Right? Like skydiving or parasailing or, you know, they don't talk about those kind of things or, you know, just whatever. Maybe some people have never been tent camping and they want to do tent camping.
I think your bucket list needs to be like a massive teamwork project, right? It needs to be you two coming together and getting excited about what each other wants to do, learning about each other, and getting those things done, right? If you're not getting that on the list or you're not making that a priority together, I don't think it's going to happen for you.
Well, I don't think it's either even, like, I don't think you should even just make just a list. Talk about every item that you're putting on that list because, you know, let's say someone says they want to go to Maldives. Well, why do you want to go to Maldives? And then when they start talking about it and they're lighting up, you can tell, oh, wow, they really want to. Maybe it's not something you really care too much about. It's not necessarily on your own personal bucket list, but you can appreciate the fact that your spouse really wants to do that because you can see how excited they are about it and what they want to do. So then when you go there, when you finally get to check that off your bucket list, it might not be that big of a deal for you, but you know that your spouse is really excited. So then you're very excited for your spouse, but you wouldn't have known that if you didn't have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You weren't making that
Yeah,
list.
it's super fun to knock them off of your list too. Like we always talk about going to Hawaii. We went to Hawaii years ago with the kids, and to be able to pull that off and have a goal and save your money and do all that leading up to it, it's exciting to do a trip. And you can do the same thing with some of your goals. Maybe you want to learn a new skill. Maybe you want to pick up the guitar, or you want to learn how to cook, or you want to learn new literature, whatever it is. That could all go on your bucket list. Say, I want to learn that, man. That's important to me, that before I clock out, I try to get that done, right? I think it's
well, and the other thing too you can have on your bucket list is writing a book, and that's not necessarily something you do as a couple, right?
Yeah.
But what that does is once you put it on your couple's bucket list, it makes your spouse support you in that.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, okay, you want to write a book? Then let me help you with that. Let me help you set some time aside, or maybe you need some pointers of how to even get started, and maybe your significant other can help you, but you don't know because you never said anything.
Yeah. And it builds your teamwork, it builds trust with each other, but it builds your friendship that much more too, because you're learning about each other. You're setting up goals to achieve, and guess what? You're accomplishing them, baby.
Yeah. Well, and there's something about sitting down and talking about even the silly things that you have a desire to do or experience, and then tell your spouse, and they're like, what, really? I didn't know that about you. That's kind of cool. Okay. And just kind of opens that line of communication and makes it for when stuff comes up that's serious, you feel more comfortable and confident in your relationship with your person. So you're able to say like, okay, on a serious note or whatever, because that you've been able to trust them with your hopes and dreams. And sometimes people can't trust with their hopes.
It's such a huge thing, man. If you're in a relationship and you're watching this and you want to build your message for, or your bucket list with each other, man, use the little things too, huh? Use the little things that you want to accomplish, because it's going to build such trust and excitement in your relationship. Exactly to say what you just said, because if you can't do that, you're going to have some real problems with some of the big goals you're trying to get done.
Well, and they're okay, spinning off the big goals. A bucket list doesn't always have to be big things. It doesn't have to be big trips. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It could be something small. Yeah. I think it's fun to have a mixture of like smaller things and bigger things. Let's say there's like a really high-end restaurant in your area where you live, and it's like hundreds of dollars a plate, okay? Yep. And you really want to go. Put that on your bucket list. It might really only cost you a $500 date, but that's a pretty expensive date. But it might only cost you $500 for a date, but then that might be something that's more feasible than saying to go fly all the way to Maldives and get a hut and all that stuff, right? It's obviously going to be way more expensive to do that. So maybe this is the time we're like, you know what? I want to do this. So let's start saving money to go do this. Let's go. Let's say we want to go in March. Okay. Well, how much we need to save? Okay, let's go. You can make a plan and you can check that off. And I think it's important to make smaller things in there that you can check off, because there's something so satisfying about checking something off.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's huge. I learned that in Leadership Management 101 20 years ago, that if you can have a sense of accomplishment in your life, man, you're going to have such victories, right?
And I'm old school. I like to have all my stuff written out and cross that something about crossing that off my list and going, yes.
But even if you don't cross it off, like if it's a mental victory, if it's a number on the scale you're trying to get, or if it's a destination you want to go to, or if it's something you want to learn, you get a certificate for that. Like, man, when you get that thing, there's a real victory there, because you put it on that list and you got it done. And sometimes if you don't put it on the list, it might not get done, man. So cheers to you for getting
And it's not as exciting when you get to that. Like if you didn't write it down somewhere or you didn't share your goal somewhere, it's not as exciting because it's all just within yourself.
It's almost expected. I'll do a little bunny trail with this one too. You mentioned earlier that, when you put goals down that maybe you want to go out to dinner for a few $100s. Like, I can't do that. Or whatever it is, right? When you put that on a list sometimes, man, it might just happen for you in a weird, miraculous way that's not going to cost you what you think it might cost you, just by you putting your expectations on there. So
well, you're putting energy into it.
Yeah,
right?
That's a huge side note that we're not going to get into on this one, but that is a huge thing to your bucket list, is putting an intention out there and say, well, we'll see if it happens. Like, I want it to happen, right?
There's something that comes with writing it down. Yeah. Like, it's something that brings it alive, brings it actually a possibility. It's not just a dream in your head floating around. It's literally on something that you can visually see and share with people. And so I just think that for whatever reason, it gives life to that. And I feel like I don't know very many people that have had a bucket list that they haven't started crossing things off. You know, I think, and I really believe that there's something to do with writing it down and having it there that makes you have the ability to start crossing things off.
Yeah.
It gives it just a little bit more of a something. I don't know.
Just like also when you're writing it, don't say college degree or 195 or whatever. Say, I want to weigh this much. I want to achieve my dream of getting this. I want, like, write down what you're going to do. So that's a whole little side thing about your bucket list we kind of got into, but that's a really good thing, setting your intentions and expectations for all of this stuff, like really putting it out there. So we'll get into categories maybe. Let's talk a little bit about what's on your bucket list. I think that might help us, okay? Okay. So some of the categories that you might want to get into is like adventure and travel, right? That's the big one that's always on people's list. I want to go somewhere.
Well, that's the first thing.
Something, yeah.
Honestly, when we first started talking about this, is the first thing I thought of was travel.
Where are we going, baby?
Well, travel. That's why I think of bucket list.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Well, what else?" I'm like, "What other than travel?" I'm like, I don't know what else do you put on a bucket list other than travel.
Okay, let's get into it, because that's the
But
easy one.
there is other things.
That's the easy one. You might say, I want to try a pizza in Milan. Okay, well, whatever. But that's still getting to go somewhere. So here's another one. How about like romantic and fun? You know, you guys are together. How about something we can do? Maybe like, let's go on a date night once a week. Or I want to go roller skating with you. Or I want to go get a slice of pizza with you. Like, it can be
I think
simple.
a date night once a week is more of like something that's on a different...
It could be, but it needs to be something that's romantic and fun for you to achieve. Those are probably too small for that, but romantic and fun.
Well, okay. Like maybe going rock climbing together for the first time. You know, something like that.
There it is.
Something that's an adventure.
A little step up than a normal weeknight.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So romantic and fun would be a good thing.
Because we've already talked about this in our podcast, Mr. Jones.
What's that?
Date nights are non-negotiable. You need to continue to date. So when you're creating your bucket list, it's not creating a bunch of date nights.
Are you guys dating out there?
You better be.
If you're not dating right now, you got a little ring on your finger, or you're in a relationship for a long time and you're not dating, bro, you better get on that. So back to what we're talking about, bucket list. But
yeah, so, you know, when I think of a bucket list, I think of like different kind of adventures that we could do together. I do not want to do this, but it would be like bungee jumping.
Oh man, I don't want to do that either.
Or skydiving. I do not want to do that either. It's not something that's on my bucket list, not something I ever have any desire to do.
One of mine was like this, romantic and fun. This probably wasn't. This is more adventure and travel, but like jumping off a cliff in Hawaii, right? I did that with our kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to do that. But you only get one chance to do that in Hawaii. So if it's on the list, you got to get to it. Personal growth. Maybe if you want to do like, I want to invest in learning new things. It might be a career. It might be also physical. Like I want to build my body to be something or tear it down to be something. It might be financial too. You know, you might want to say, hey, I want to have properties and I want to rent those properties out and I want to acquire these properties, you know? Mm-hmm. So financial could be another one as well. Lots of different sections that your relationship is hinging on. All these areas that you're going to have to make sure where are we going with this, right? Mm-hmm. Personal growth is huge. Get together with each other about, you know, how you're going to take care of each other, how you're going to take care of your family. What does your routine look like? Stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how would you suggest to create this bucket list?
Ooh. It all starts with a hot date.
He says, ooh.
I think that is probably the answer to almost every question in your marriage.
A hot date?
It just starts with a date.
Yeah.
Like, you could be at each other's throat.
Look, it doesn't have to be anything that big of a deal. It could be going to go get donuts.
Let's go get coffee.
Yeah,
let's go get a coffee and have a little chat. Yeah.
Just to get you out of the house and away from everything and bring your notebook so you have it. Or I guess, you know, like I said earlier, I'm old school. I like things written down. But our phones, you can take notes in your phone too. So you don't even have to bring a notebook.
But a lot of times, like if you're going to do something like this, you're going to start a project together, a bucket list, or you're going to talk about things. It's good to get out of the house, a fresh new environment, take a half hour, just have a coffee and start writing some of this stuff down. Like come prepared to the meeting, obviously talk about this as a couple and say, let's do this. Let's go for a coffee and talk about some of the things that we want to accomplish with our lives.
Well, and here's the thing too, is like, I don't feel like this necessarily has to be completed in one date.
It's ever going, probably. I mean, there's things I'm just finding out that I want to add on there, you know?
Right.
So
Or things that you're learning about different places you didn't know about. Or
You might say, I don't want that on my list no more. I'm not going over there.
Somebody said something to you that they did, and you're like, ooh, I like that idea. I never thought about that. That would be fun. I would love to experience that one day.
Yeah, or someone tells you, you got to go to Alaska. You got to go do a cruise up there. Well, if that's really on your heart, it needs to go on the list.
Maybe. I mean, you got to look into it.
If it's on your heart.
Just because someone tells you, you should.
You got to figure that out.
You got to decide that, right? But, like, I think it's good to sit down and set aside time to talk about different things that you would want, both of you would want on the bucket list. Write them down, discuss it, ask the questions. Why do you want to go do this or that or the other? Get excited for your other one. So you try to understand where they're coming from and why they want to do or learn or be the things that they're telling you.
Yeah.
Especially if you didn't know before, right?
Yeah.
Especially if something new comes out, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then once you have some stuff dialed out, like I said, it doesn't have to be a large list. It could be 5 things if you really wanted to be 5 things, right? Because you can always add to it. Then once you're done doing that, then I would suggest that you come home and write it down on something more in your face. So like maybe go to the Dollar Tree and get a poster board. Maybe get a dry eraser board that you can put maybe in your closet or in your bedroom or somewhere. If you have a home office or somewhere that you guys can see it on the regular, separate it all out in your categories. That way you can start looking at your bucket list and figure out what you're gonna check off this year. Or maybe you say, you know what? I'm looking at our list and we've got a lot of traveling we want to do.
You might want to trim that back a little.
Maybe, not necessarily trim it back, but maybe we should start talking about on January 1st, that be part of our goal setting of where we're going. And we go to our bucket list and say, okay, where do we want to go? Okay, this is where I want to go. Now let's reverse engineer it and decide how much it's going to cost, how much money we need, and then how much money do we need to save? When can we realistically go?
You might be listening to this whole conversation and saying, that's cute. I'm not writing it down. But if you're not writing these things down, it's not going to be in the forefront of your mind. You're not going to have these objectives to go after. They're going to slip away. You might say one day, you could be scrolling and say, oh, I want to go wherever it is, right? I'm going to go there someday. And you just keep scrolling. You're going to forget about that. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to go there someday, man, write it down and put it somewhere and say, I'm going to go there someday. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to go there someday. And just keep saying it. Keep saying it and saying it. And when you start crossing things off your list, your faith is going to start growing and you're going, wow, I can do this. Mm. That's what happened to us. You're like, wow, we really can do these things. So then you're going to start crossing, well, maybe my goals are a little too small for me. I need to make them even bigger. So this thing can grow your whole life. And that's what we're saying. It's like it just grows more and more. And then when you see things win, you're like, oh, I can do even more. So it's a fun game you can play. And if you're not doing it, you're missing it. This is a fun game you can play with your life, right? Mm-hmm. And you can really attack your life and create this beautiful thing. And all it starts with you basically just saying, what do I want, right? Mm-hmm. Figure it out, write it down, work together, go accomplish those goals.
And have fun doing it.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's meant to be fun.
And don't make a timeline like, oh, I got to get there in this time. Like, just make it, let's be fluent with it. Make it happen and it'll work for you. Figure out how it works. Like, be patient with it. This doesn't happen overnight. These things don't happen overnight, right?
Well, I think the most important thing is creating a bucket list together brings you together.
With goals and objectives.
It just brings you together and it puts you guys on the same page.
You're talking.
It helps with the communication. It helps so many things. Even if you don't cross anything off that bucket list, by creating it, just kind of pulled you guys together even more.
Well, here's a little side note. You've listened this long, so there's probably people listening right now that might have a rocky relationship right now and be like, oh man, this is a great way to get your partner back with you. Just say, hey, I got an idea. How about we go to coffee and I got a couple ideas. Why don't you think about some things that you want to accomplish? I'd love to hear them. And you guys start talking about this, you're going to get excited about your relationship. I promise you, right? Mm-hmm. It's impossible not to, if you love each other, to sit across the table and be like, okay, well, let's do some things that spice it up and have fun in this life. That's what it's about, right? Mm-hmm. So we say that all the time. If you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. This is a good way to have it with your marriage and in your relationship as you go forward, right?
Yep.
So push the limits with it, have some expectations, and write them down. Get them in your face, baby. Let's get them done. Right?
Yep.
Okay. That's bucket list. You got questions or comments? Hit us below. Love to hear from you guys. Suggestions for more talks? Hit us. We'd love to talk about that stuff.
Yeah. Let us know what you want to hear.
That's right. Have a good week, Jill Jones.
You too, Darren Jones.
I'll see you in the morning for a walk.
Okay, see ya.
See you guys. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you.
Bye.